The following podcast contains opinions which are intangible and pose no threat to your safety. It also contains spoilers, which are very real and may harm your viewing experience. You've been warned. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I've come to pet your dog again.
What if Death was just a real chill guy? What if he came up and was just like, "Hey, man, oh, you got a cat?" And just like starts playing with the cat.
I feel like you gotta be a chill guy if you're Death, though. Like, you can't take your job too seriously, because you're gonna get, like, every day you're gonna get rustled.
You think?
Like, every fucking day, you're just gonna be like, alright, let's go to the Afterlife, and then be like, who the fuck are you supposed to be, you little gay-ass, wannabe-ass, black robe wearing ass? You just be like, no, you
People
can't.
are just ripping it. You think? Oh, okay, like, I think more people are scared of Death than they actually, like, are annoyed with him, right? Like,
Yo, if I'm dead, I'll rip into Death. I don't give a damn.
Don't rip into Death. He's a hardworking dude. This poor skeleton ass motherfucker is just trying to, like, make a means. You're like, all right, let's come on. I gotta hustle you over to the afterlife, and you're trying to give him shit. He's trying to do you a favor.
I'll invite him in for dinner.
See, that's the kind of thing that needs to happen. More people.
You see a Monty Python reference there?
Oh, you motherfucker!
Ooh.
We should
snuck it in.
Snug that old cut, that deep cut right in there.
Nobody that listens to this is gonna get that.
No, man, kids don't even know what Monty Python is these days. They don't know.
That's not true. They know about some of them know about the Holy Grail. Yeah. That's about it. That's pretty much it.
I showed somebody Mel Brooks movies. We watched Spaceballs, and they were like they'd never seen it before, and I was like, how? Like, I mean, I saw that crap when I was like, what, maybe like 8, 9, and that was already like a couple decades of it already being out, like.
Mel Brooks is really the grandfather of all those really terrible movies you see get made, like all the ones that got made in like the 2000s, like Date Movie, the comebacks.
Yeah, the attempt on parody.
Not Another Teen Movie. Yeah, they're really shitty attempt on parody that really isn't funny.
Yeah. And
Mel Brooks was the guy who like pioneered that and was the first original dude to be like, hey, I got this.
Yeah,
and he made something original and funny.
His movies were actually funny. There's a lot of people who probably say they don't age well. Spaceballs to me isn't as great as the others. Like, but Blazing Saddles, I absolutely love Blazing Saddles.
Oh my god, Gene Wilder.
Yeah, I love Gene Wilder.
For you kids out there, Gene Wilder played Willy Wonka in the original movie.
Oh, R.I.P. I was legitimately sad. He really did influence my comedy style. I was a huge fan of his. But yeah, Blazing Saddles is absolutely hilarious.
Blazing Saddles is good. I really like. I think my favorite amongst the Mel Brooks movies would have to be either Robin Hood Men in Tights.
That's really good one.
Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein is great. Cute story. I think if I'm not screwing this up, but that was like the first movie date my parents went on, was to go see Young Frankenstein.
Oh shit!
I was like, yeah, I think that's adorable. Which. Again, a testament to how old those movies are. Just ripping at my parents there, but and on that note, greetings everybody. Welcome to
How's it going?
Yeah, we'll just go right into it. Welcome to Artistically Speaking, Poor Artists with Rich Opinions. I'm your host,
That's
Bam.
Right. I'm Dante. This is where we pretend to be snobby assholes for an hour.
We are not. Well, no, we are. We're pretty snobby. You cannot be an artist if you're not snobby. Good.
I spin my root beer at you.
Root beer? That is. Listen, if it's not, it's sarsaparilla. You gotta know how to make it sound fancy.
I can't afford sarsaparilla. I'm broke.
Jeez. I can't. You drinking that AW? You know how expensive that AW is? I can't afford that.
I'm drinking that store-owned brand root beer.
That Kroger brand. That's how you know we're from the East. What's Kroger called in the West? I don't even remember. It's got some weird ass name.
I don't know.
But speaking of the East Coast, we watched Luke Cage.
Woo, Harlem.
That was yeah. See, that kind of works, right? Have you ever, Dante? You live in New York. Have you ever been to Harlem?
I'm not. I don't go to Harlem. That ain't safe. That ain't a safe place.
Oh gosh, starting off on a good foot there.
So you just don't go to Harlem, eh? I stick on my side of the river.
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh no. I'm gonna cut you, boy. I'm gonna cut you off right there.
Made it sound like I live in New York City.
I know, right? Like
4 hours away.
Hey, well, I mean, like you're close. I mean, like I live around the Detroit area, but I've also been to like up north. I've been to the Canada. I've been to areas around. Chicago is only about like 4 hours from where I am. It's not bad, but
it's not New York. That's not Harlem.
It's not Harlem. I'm just saying, like, if it's only 4 hours away, how come you haven't gone and visited?
Because I'm broke.
Well, okay. I can drink to that. Oh my goodness. Well, alrighty. Well, you say we go ahead and we get right into it.
All right.
Wait, is your mouth full of food?
No.
You motherfucker.
Oh my god, I got one bite left. Talk
ahead,
about
take
the
it.
cake.
Take that bite. I cut this out. You're good. Oh my goodness.
Leave it in. Let them know.
Let them know.
We're people too. Luke Cage is about a giant man who is bulletproof, and also he heals good.
This is the third great essay of Luke Cage by Dante.
Luke Cage is black. It's very important you remember that.
Oh, so that's the thing, right? Let's go ahead and I want to roll off that. So this started off as a comic, right? That was made in the 70s. A very interesting era for black culture, I'd say. Especially with like movies like blaxploitation movies, stuff like that. And I feel like this comic from what I've seen, I haven't actually like really read them, but from what I've seen, like it really delves into that.
I haven't read a lot of it either.
No,
it's very. I know things that happen from issues that I've read where like he'll show up, like I know what happens with him and Jessica Jones in Civil War and things of that nature, but I don't know logistics.
No, I just seeing the just from the stuff I've seen, it's very much 70s oriented. Like everyone's got afros. They've all got bell bottoms. It was really interesting to see. And I honestly wondered what they were gonna do with that in this series. And I feel like they kind of kept a good Motown kind of 70s tone with it, despite the fact that they made it really modern. But
downtown boogie.
You're right,
downtown
exactly.
Boogie.
But yeah, Luke Cage is a Netflix original series. Again, they're killing it. Most of their original series I really loved. It stars Mike Coulter. What?
I wouldn't exactly call it original.
Okay, well, it is a quote unquote a Netflix original, but it stars Mike Coulter, and it was created by, and I'm gonna butcher this, Chio Hidari Coker, I believe is his name.
You're out of the two of us, you're the only one who has been to Japan, and you can't get an Asian name right.
He's black. Don't you even? I think it's pronounced Chio Hidari Coker.
For this.
Yes, you are. That is straight up your fault, but that's all right. But anyway, one thing I do want to point out. So Mike Coulter, he's not been in a lot of stuff before this, but he is a sexy man. I just want to lay that out right now. The best part about watching this movie or the entire show is seeing this man do anything because he is handsome. He sounds handsome. He looks handsome.
He's just big.
He's a handsome dude.
He's all right.
He's all right.
Big bald with a goatee.
He doesn't meet your standard. But I mean, he looks good. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. All right, let me read this IMDb.
He's all right.
He's all right. This IMDb synopsis here, plot synopsis. When a sabotaged experiment gives him super strength and unbreakable skin, Luke Cage becomes a fugitive attempting to rebuild his life in Harlem and must soon confront his past and fight in a battle for the heart of his city. And I think that's pretty good. It's a pretty good generalization of what happens in the first season here. We only did watch the first season, which is 10 episodes.
Really fight for the heart of the city. They always fight in like the same 3 blocks.
But that's the heart of the city, though. Like, it's the same 3 blocks. That's actually something I do want to bring up later when we get to the visuals. But so of course we'll start with the writing portion here. If you're new to the podcast, because this is only episode 3, right? We look at media and then we break it up into writing and visuals.
Certainly are better of the episodes.
And we just take an artistic look at them and focus on like technique and stuff.
But as far as the writing goes, I'm gonna summarize. So Luke Cage is black. That's important. The people in Harlem, they're also apparently predominantly black. They like him because he's black.
That is not how the writing goes.
That's literally how the whole show goes. Is it so like in your face about like everything?
What are you talking about? It's just the culture. It's just showing Harlem culture. That's all.
It's important to know.
It is not important. In fact,
that
most
Luke
of the
Cage is black.
That has a lot.
It's brought up every other episode.
No, it's not. Yeah, but it has very little to do about Luke Cage. Okay, so let's get into the plot real quick. So Luke Cage, he just sort of moved into this town, which is Harlem, of course, and he's trying to stay low because he's a fugitive, and he's got these superpowers, but he doesn't really want to. He doesn't want to draw attention to himself, so he just works at this barber shop, which is kind of a central point for the city where anyone, like, it's kind of like a neutral zone. Anyone can come in, everyone can feel fine, and as far as like he's concerned, he just wants to live his life. Now the main villain, there's a couple of them, but the 2 main ones they're a group of cousins. They want to sort of run the city. One
Lonely the King.
Wow, I can't remember her name now.
Okay, so
hold on a second. I'm trying to remember. Because there's Cornell.
This is where I step in to help you.
There's Cornell Stokes.
You yell at me to step in to help, and now you yelled at me for stepping in to help.
I just tell me the name. It's Cornell Stokes and Mariah Dillard.
It's Cornell Stokes and Mariah. So their nicknames are actually their nicknames. Mr. Stokes' nickname is Cottonmouth, which is the name that he went by in the comics, which he does not like in the series. Right. And Mariah's nickname in the comics was actually Black Mariah, which shows up at one point when the 2 cousins are having a conversation. And he calls her that.
Yes. It
feels weird and out of place that he just out of nowhere is like, "Shut up, Black Mariah." And I'm like, "You're black too, what?"
No, of course he would.
It felt out of place to me.
She's not called Black Mariah because she's black.
No, that was her like the name that her reputation had donned her in the comics.
Because she was death incarnate.
I didn't know that until I looked it up after I watched Luke Cage. There was a lot of things that I was like, why would he call his cousin black? He's black too. What?
Oh my goodness. I didn't take it to mean that. I figured it was like it was a gangster thing, because so the thing is, these people, Mariah and her cousin, Cornell, they came from this family that was like basically a mafia, and they basically owned Harlem, right? And so but they're trying to do it in a more modern sense.
What was the mother's name? It was Mama.
I can't remember, honestly.
God, and it was always brought up because Shades mentions it a lot.
Yeah,
it was Mama something.
It's not Mama
Mabel.
Mama Mabel, that's it.
Yeah,
Mama Mabel. Yep. So this woman, I'll probably cut all the other stuff out. So yeah, but Mama Mabel.
You got a lot to censor already.
I know, right? No, it's fine. I'll let people call us ignorant. That's fine.
They're gonna call me ignorant.
Hey, that's fine. It takes the heat off of me. I'll take it.
I mean, for the record, I'm not racist.
Oh, don't start with
Okay?
that. That's anyone
I'm
who's
not.
Oh
I'm
my
literally like one of
God.
the least racist people on the planet. But
All
the
right.
issue came
Okay.
up
I'm gonna
was
stop.
like
I'm
how
gonna.
a lot of things were portrayed in the show.
But that's.
Is very in your
That's
face
not.
about it, and it kind of put me in a different like. Well, not like I saw it. I think I reacted to things differently because of how a lot of things are portrayed in the show.
How do you mean?
So, well, like, cause Mariah's whole campaign isn't just for Harlem.
No, it's keep Harlem
It's
black.
yeah, it's literally just keep Harlem black.
That was the point I was trying to make before we got off on a tangent, sort of, is that's all of that black culture that you're saying was thrown in your face. It's not central to the plot, and it's not important for Luke Cage. It's not important for the supporting characters.
No, it's
the
not.
reason
It's just
there
it's very
is because that's
thrust
her.
upon
That's
you.
that's it's the reason it's there is because that's her motivation as her character, as the antagonist of this show. That's why it's there.
Well, she's
and
one
I
at the
feel like it works really well because it makes her a very sympathetical antagonist.
Oh man, there's a lot of there's four antagonists.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And
Well,
and how it
three.
takes them and like what it does with them. I kind of applauded the writing for because it's not very systematic. Things sort of happen that you kind of don't predict.
Before we get too far into this, are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, every show has spoilers.
Right.
I got a spoiler warning in the beginning, so you're good.
So there's four protagonists, then there's three.
Then there's three, and then there's
I'll
two.
let you guys guess for a while as to which one dies.
Well, but we can get into that. So yeah, but my point is like that's why the writing has that focus on like black culture. Plus, also it's Harlem. Like that's what Harlem was like. The Harlem Renaissance was a huge.
Well, that's what they're trying to reminisce too. Is like it's in a way they're trying to like portray like another Harlem Renaissance with Luke Cage.
That's what the. Well, it's not about Luke Cage. It's about Mariah. That's what she wants. She wants a second Harlem Renaissance. She wants to bring in the like her motivation is very clear to me. Like she wants to bring in the like this new artistic piece and make Harlem a center for black culture, like it used to be. But it's not anymore. And this is what I really liked about the show too, is I think it really captures sort of a modern Harlem. You know, Harlem, I think like according to like the 2008 census or whatever, like Harlem isn't primarily black anymore. Like for the first time since the 1930s. And then it's also seeing,
Right.
you know, but with as New York in general is getting better and economically speaking,
They actually, in terms of writing and in that sense too, with Mariah, they do a really good job because there is, that she's supposed to be a villain.
yeah.
You know that a lot of what she's doing isn't right, but her intentions actually are incredibly pure. Like she really just wants to make the city a better place.
Right.
She wants to like instead of having like drug houses and these things, she wants to put up like parks.
Right.
She wants to put up like housing for people, affordable house. Like she wants to do all these really nice things.
Right,
but
and it makes sense too.
overshadowed.
It makes sense too because, and like I said, in a modern Harlem, like with the economy going up, like this would be the time, like, and this is the time to advocate for that stuff. And I really like that. I thought that was really intelligent of the writers. But yeah, so like that's her motivation, and I think that's why it plays a big part. But I maybe we should probably step back a little bit and take a look at the actual flow of the story. And because it's we literally watched a whole season, so it's 10 episodes. We're not going to go plot point by plot point.
Yeah, there's 10 hours.
Like it's a lot. I think, but it's interesting. So like I want to sort of mention how it starts off, and I think it starts off on a very interesting note, in that so the monolith or the monomyth, also known as like the hero's journey, you have your protagonist who isn't really anything special, and then through certain events, usually the death of a family member, they're forced out into the world. They find a mentor. That mentor teaches them how to become more powerful, and then at the very end of it, they become what is it? They become the not power, but basically they're in control of like both worlds, right? Like it's usually Luke Skywalker, for example.
It's very reminiscent of of Spider-Man. It's very like Pops is almost like
that's
his Uncle Ben.
That's like a very good example too. Like Spider-Man is definitely like a hero's journey. You know, he gets his ability, and then he learns as he travels, he learns to there's a control his ability, and then he could defeat whatever threat there is, and he becomes the champion of two sides almost. But what this show does, which I really like, is it still follows that basic line of character development, right? Like he's someone who because he has someone close to him die, he has to it forces him to go out into the world and to sort of experience it, and he gets smarter and stronger and whatever, and eventually he's able to defeat the villain, blah blah blah. I like that, but it sort of turns it on its head, in that he starts off with the power. At no point in the series, like, he's not gaining the ability to do these things.
Well, that's why I said that was like Spider-Man is, because Spider-Man he had already been bitten, he already had his powers, and then he just went around and just dicked around and didn't really use them too awfully much, except for like personal benefit. And then his Uncle Ben dies, and he's like, all right, now is when I need to make a change, and I need to fight for the people because it's my responsibility.
Right.
Except Pops isn't like, with great power comes hot bitches. He's more like, hey, you probably should though. And Luke is like, okay.
Well, that's I mean, the theme that the story talks about is just move forward. Just always move forward. Don't look back. Don't move back. Just always move forward. And that's how it starts off. And So this mentor figure, Pops, he runs this barber shop that is it's basically like the neutral zone, right? Like gang members, mafia members, whatever, like everyone's welcome here. This is where people come to relax, sort of. In an unfortunate event, like, the character Pops ends up dying because of Cornell, because of Cottonmouth, this. And it's not really Cottonmouth isn't the one to kill him, but it's still like it traces itself back to him in a way, because everyone appreciated Pops, even Cottonmouth, and because of that, it sets up. What it does is it sets up an antagonist who isn't antagonistic, right? So the idea of the protagonist is that he has to move the plot forward. And then the idea of the antagonist is somebody who wants to stop the protagonist, right? There is somebody who's keeping the plot from moving forward. At no point does Cornell ever do this. Does Cottonmouth? He sort of already existed in this play. He's not like he's making the world worse. I mean, he's a gang member, yeah. So like, obviously he's contributing to crime.
Well, to give it a little context, it's like, so all of the situations that Luke finds himself in against Cottonmouth are always never his fault, or like Cottonmouth never like actively seeks him out in the beginning. It's always just like Luke happens to be there, and it's initially it's just Pops who's like, hey, this kid got into some bad stuff, bring him here, I'll talk to Cottonmouth, we're gonna figure this out. And what ends up happening is he sends he's like, all right, well, I'm going to agree to Pops' terms. I'll go down there and talk to him. And he tells one of his men, he's like, if you see the kid in the streets, if you see him screwing around in the streets, take him down. But if you don't touch him. And this guy winds up getting a tip that the kid was at Pops' barbershop. So he goes down there and he just unloads on the front of this barbershop, and he winds up killing Pops in the crossfire. Right. Luke winds up shielding the kid. The other kid winds up only getting winged, and Pops winds up taking a bullet in the neck, and that's like Luke's moment where because Pops is like always forward, and Luke is like, all right, now I'm mad. I'm bringing down all the criminals. Right, and it's very much like a revenge story in that, that's what the point I was trying to make. I thought was interesting is that, and even later, like after that, like. It's not until a good halfway in the season that Cornell's only purpose is to stop Luke Cage, right? Because Luke Cage is stopping Cornell. He really is an anti-hero that they just build up to be like a standard hero.
That's what's it's interesting because like he yeah, as far as his role in the as the plot goes, he does move the plot forward. I mean, Luke Cage does. So I feel very much that he is the protagonist. It's just it's interesting to me that it's very preemptive relationship he has with his antagonist, or at least one of his antagonists, because he has quite a few in the series.
He's got 4.
Yep. So like with Cottonmouth, like he's taking the steps to stop Cottonmouth before Cottonmouth ever like knows what's going on, and it's really interesting too. And that's I don't know if this is a problem because it didn't bother me, but now that I'm thinking about it. What are Luke Cage's motivations outside of you killed someone I really cared about? It's just pure revenge, right? Like
his initial motivation is just pure revenge. Yeah, like his initial motivation is just you killed Pops. Now I'm going to bring down your criminal empire so that way nobody good gets hurt again.
Yeah.
And then after a while his motivations change because people start reacting to it and he winds up doing things that he believes is right, and then the people of Harlem start to get behind him, so he stops fighting for
himself,
the revenge of Pops and himself,
right.
And he starts fighting for the people of Harlem.
And I think this is, I just sort of figured this out in my head right now. This is kind of why I love this series. It's not, to me, that's a very genuine and very human element that you don't often see in like a hero's journey. In a hero's journey tale, or even like superhero tale, your antagonist has these motivations that are just a little too pure, right? Like, Luke wants to stop the Empire because the Empire's bad, right?
What's the male version of a Mary Sue?
Gary Stu.
Gary, yeah, it's very. There are a lot of them that are just very Gary Stu, like Superman, who's just like, I do good because it's what's right or whatever. Yeah, it's whatever.
That's not to me. That's not like. Ultimately Gary Stu, that's more like Boy Scout, right? Like Gary Stu is a character that, or Mary Sue, whatever, is a character that can't do no wrong, that no matter what they do, like they're good at it. Like to me, that's more of like a self-insert for the writer type deal. But with
I guess what you said, Boy Scout is more. Yeah. So that's what the problem with a lot of heroes lately is. They're all just fucking Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
It's just tons of people that are like, I do what's right because it's right, and then they just go and do it, and they never, they're never, their morals are never put into check. I mean, with Batman and Superman, it's like.
Okay, well, we're not even gonna get into that mess.
We're not getting into that fucking shit show, but no, it is very much like they toy with whether or not Luke is actually helping. They toy with the fact that is Luke actually a good guy, or is he just doing this for some greater means to an end,
right?
Especially with his initial just I'm doing it out of revenge. They really toy with the line of right and wrong with what Luke's doing. Yeah. And he even goes up against the police in a lot of instances where you're like, that probably was not very hero-like, but I love it.
Right, well, because he does what he has to. Like that's, I think, the initial reason everyone loved Batman, right, was Batman was the character who walked the line, right, of good and evil. Initially, I don't think this is the way anymore. But like I remember, Batman was definitely a character who was, he did what he had to get information, but he never crossed the line, right? So like he'd hang you over a building and scare the crap out of you to get you to do something, but he never crossed the line to actually dropping the person to their death. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's Daredevil.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's a very good point.
Fucking, I loved Luke Cage so much. I started watching Daredevil, which I'm really really enjoying. And Daredevil is a huge leap because you go from like Luke Cage, who's just like smack somebody upside the head, and they go unconscious or whatever, throw somebody across the street and they're done, whatever. And then you go to like, hey, jab this knife into this guy's eye socket for this one nerve, and then drop him into a dumpster from a 17-story building. And I'm like, oh, so this is how we're playing this? Okay.
Yeah, it's totally crazy. Yeah, Daredevil is definitely like the extreme Batman, right? Like he has crossed the line between good and evil. Like he's so blurred that he could technically be an anti-hero. But it's weird because when I think about Luke Cage, and despite the fact that he has very personal motivations for any form of his progression, it still seems to me like he's very heroic. I don't see him as an anti-hero.
Well, they build that up too because like he doesn't kill anybody.
No.
He never kills. He like in every single one they make a big point of that when he's going around and he's like, all right, I'm taking revenge for Pops. He goes around and he starts knocking off drug houses, and while he's doing it, nobody gets killed. There's people that get injured, yeah, but none of it's serious injuries. It's all minor stuff, and he leaves them incapacitated for the police.
Right.
Like it's never a serious injury. It's always just like knocking out, and then he leaves. And then that's, it's done, whatever. He doesn't even really arrest anybody or, even set them up for the cops, really. They just happen to be knocked out when the cops show up. So,
right. Well, that's actually part of the brilliant, is like one of the ways he takes down Cottonmouth's criminal organization is he breaks into these storehouses where they keep their money. And he breaks in, he causes this huge ruckus, so the cops are called. He leaves after taking everybody out, but he just leaves all the money there. So the cops come in, they confiscate the money, so Cottonmouth can't get it anymore. And it was really smart, but also, yeah, like it's I don't want to say honorable is the word, but like it just overall good guy. Like I feel like that's the best part.
They established that the reason he leaves all the money and everything behind is because then it goes to the police.
Right, and the Cottonmouth can't get his hands back on it, right?
Cottonmouth can't get his hands on it, but also the police will use that money to fund, to help further the police funds and things of that nature.
Is that how that works? They get to use what they confiscate?
Yeah, so whenever it goes past evidence or whatever, if police need it, they will use confiscated funds for policeness. Like if they need to buy armor or if they need, ammunition or more sidearms.
Policeness.
That's their policeness, the fucking pigs.
Okay. But yeah, I think it's very refreshing to see a heroic character not be a hero by means of, like, not be a romanticized hero. He's just a good dude trying to do things that he needs to, right? Like he just it all starts off with him just trying to be just trying to make means, like he as far as like the lore goes, he went to prison. They had some experiments done on him and shit, and then he broke out of prison after he became basically Superman, right? Like he's super strong, he's impenetrable. He can't fly, but whatever. And he breaks out and he just wants to live his life, and then like he has this girl he falls in love with, and then she dies, and after that it's just him sort of rebuilding himself. And I think that's the coolest part about this story, is that it doesn't take place at the beginning of Luke Cage. It takes place in the middle of Luke Cage. And there's a lot of interesting things happening here. It is the beginning of him in his hero career, but as far as the character goes, it's sort of like this is like Luke Cage's second act, right? Like it might be the beginning of his hero's journey or whatever, or him becoming a superhero. But for him, it's really like kind of a second act, and I think that's really interesting. It takes away a whole lot of the early build-up that you just don't care about. Like everything rolls very smoothly. It comes off organically. And I think that's the other thing too, is because they remove this, Boy Scout aspect of him being perfect and he's just, a normal human being. You also get that it removes the bullshit of the man of mystery. And that's one of the tropes I hate in superheroes. And this story doesn't follow that at all.
He is too more in a sense humanized than most other heroes. Where like
I would say more than any hero. I honestly can't think of a single hero.
Well, because he doesn't live in like Batman and everything. And they all live in like this lavish places. Like Daredevil, Matt Murdock lives in like this really nice big apartment. And Superman lives in his little apartment, but it is a nice apartment.
Listen, I'm gonna cut you off. I want to cut you off real quick, just because this is how I know you and I are poor. This is how I know you and I are poor right here. Is because I don't think in the story of Matt Murdock and Daredevil. I don't think his studio apartment was supposed to be lavished. It was supposed to look like, I think it's, the story comes off as if like, oh, you're just this
huge
single
apartment.
guy. I know, yeah. What's a studio apartment? It's really big, but like, you know, like he complains because it's right across from like a neon sign that, not that he can see it, but like you know, like it shows like it's supposed to be, and in that story it's supposed to be like, oh, he, you know, he's not some big time lawyer. He, you know, he's just got this one studio apartment. He, you know, he doesn't get paid as much because he tries to help out the little people. That's the way the story tells that off. But to you and me, that looks like a damn good apartment, right?
that does look like a damn good. That's an apartment in New York. That's an expensive apartment.
That just
you got to pull in some cash to afford that.
That's absolutely how I know you and I are poor, right there.
I'm out here eating ramen almost every day, and he's out here living the life. In New York, son of a bitch. But no, that's why I like Luke though, is because Luke, like, he literally lives in like these tiny apartments. Yeah. Like a tiny apartment was above this
barbershop.
No.
The Chinese restaurant. Yeah, the Chinese
restaurant.
Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
I couldn't remember what it was called, but he lives like in this tiny apartment above this Chinese restaurant, and then he winds up moving into this tiny apartment above Pops's barbershop, but they are tiny, they are small, they are made to look crammed.
Well, that's
it is very humanized.
Yeah, that's a thing with Marvel, though. I will say, how's that saying go? DC Comics are about heroes trying to be people, and then Marvel is about people trying to be heroes, right? So like you get this idea, like, you know, DC that has a lot of like godlike superheroes, but they're just trying to be human. They just want to be, you know, emotional and emphasize. And then the other aspect, Marvel, you've got these poor ass people, just, you know, day-to-day schmoes who are trying to, you know, balance their hero life, who are trying to be larger than what they actually are, and it's really hard for them. So Marvel's really good at that. Luke Cage, I think, definitely sits in with that archetype. But to me, it's different. So like Spider-Man is a good example. Again, bringing up parallels, but Spider-Man, you know, he's a poor teacher. He just sort of lives with his Aunt May.
Marvel, so
well, yeah, I know. I'm just saying, but I think where Spider-Man does it, but it still keeps the man of mystery, right? Like it still humanizes Peter Parker greatly. We see a lot of Peter Parker's personal issues, but it still has that man of mystery thing, and that's where a lot of those issues come from, and that shit always bugged me. Well,
so does Matt Murdock has that too. Daredevil, he's got that too, and I think that's because they hide in the costume.
Well, that's what I mean by man of mystery, right? It's they have the dual identity thing going on. Luke Cage doesn't. Luke Cage is Luke Cage. He's on TV. You see him in the streets. I mean, it's a little later. He's a little reluctant about it at first, which I like, but after you know, after shit goes down, he's like, yeah, listen, I'm Luke Cage. You know where to find me. Come at me. You know, like, what are you going to do? You can't do anything. And I love that because I feel like it's refreshing to me. I'm sick of masked heroes, right? It's just nice to see somebody who's just like, listen, like he's got no family. He's got no loved ones. Like, he don't care. All he's about is like, yeah, you know, come at me. What are you going to do? Blow up my house? I'll get a new one. You know, like, I will take you down, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's something that's so ballsy about that I just love. It to me, like, that's a hero. That's someone who's like, fuck with me, I dare you.
That's part of his revenge arc that they explore about throughout the first season. Is like, this is a man who, when he was in prison, was subjected to these fight tournaments and things of that nature, and he was at his core broken.
Yes.
So now he hits a point where, like, he's like, I'm done running. You know, like, he doesn't want to hide from this anymore. He's like, I'm coming out into the light. And he was like, whatever comes my way, I'll handle it. Like, yeah. There's nothing they can do to me that isn't worse than what's already been done. So that's one of the really, really nice things, is because even though a lot of these people know where he lives, there's only, I think, one instance in season 1 where, like, they actually actively attack where he lives. Yeah. And or I should say 2, because there's the beginning where they blow up the Chinese shop.
Yes.
And he winds up saving the owner of the Chinese shop, the woman there.
Yes.
And gets them out of the rubble. And then the second instance is towards the end when Diamondback shows up, who it is revealed that they are brothers. You're welcome. That's a whole like they take like 4 episodes
Okay,
to kind of get that.
just real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but the way he reveals that he's his brother,
It's so dumb.
it's so good. It's so
It's so
fun.
dumb.
What's he say? He's like, I'm your brother, bitch, and then shoots him into a garbage can. It's
like,
so good.
We were like brothers. Bruh, I am your brother, and then just bam, and it's oh what?
It's so good. It was so funny.
He's like, what? But is he actually my brother?
Right.
What?
And then just
And then they like drive to like Georgia from Harlem, and it's just like this whole thing that almost adds nothing.
But no, that's like character development. But yeah, as far as
it literally is like 4 episodes where he's like, oh, he's my brother. Oh, I guess he is my brother. That's the whole arc summed up in 2 seconds. It's not an interesting arc. It's not a fun arc.
Okay,
it's literally he goes into his old dad's church and he's like, huh, I guess he was.
Yeah, but
and then
I
that's
didn't
the whole
focus
thing.
on it that much though, and that's what I think I liked about it. Is like because you're right. Like it does take like I think it's like 2 or 3 episodes. But that's also because this is a TV show, and like most TV shows, you have a story A and a story B. And when he's out in Georgia doing whatever, it's usually story B. And then the story A is is like the shit that's going down in Harlem. And that's when like some real interesting stuff goes down. Including like all the like because all the villains in this series are all kind of tied together in a way.
They are. So Cottonmouth and Mariah are tied together because they're cousins and they work together in this underground thing. Shades comes in because Diamondback sends him to go handle operations because Luke Cage has showed up and is putting kinks in the operation. So because Cottonmouth is one of Diamondback's #1 buyers, he's like, hey, Shades, handle this.
Right.
So Shades comes in and he starts helping manage things and he says, hey, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, we can do that. 90% of the time he's ignored, and
but that's why Diamondback ends up coming in himself, and then Diamondback is connected to Luke. Excuse me, Diamondback is connected to Luke Cage, but he's also connected to Cottonmouth because they work together, and because Cottonmouth is connected to Mariah, and Shades is connected to Mariah too, because Shades was a kid who just heavily, I'm gonna say sexualized. I think that's the right way to put it. Mama Mabel. He's all up on Mariah. So like there's just this interconnectivity like this web for these villains, and I like that development. And so they all sort of influence each other. So despite like it's weird because like it's true that we have I'm gonna say 3 villains. I don't think Shade technically counts.
He counts.
Shade is a problem currently, but as far as this season is considered, he's more of a support, like an evil support character.
No, I definitely think that he becomes initially he's an evil support, but he does become one of the more main protagonists, especially after the death or protagonist
antagonist.
Antagonist. Sorry,
you said protagonist twice, homie.
So he becomes one of the more main villains, especially after Cottonmouth is killed.
But
he essentially is manipulating Mariah so that he can control the operation.
Right.
And that's brought up by Diamondback.
I get that, but his role in the plot doesn't really concern Luke Cage yet. Not in this season. In this season, as far as the protagonist is concerned, he doesn't care. He's all about manipulating for his own needs, like the villains and what the villains are doing, so that he can get hold of this bar and everything, and that he can sort of relive his glory days, and he wants to return of Mama Mabel, basically. So he's trying to warp Mariah into that as a villain. But as far as Luke Cage is concerned, he really doesn't care. He just does what he's told to do, sort of. So I don't see him as an antagonist in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely a shit stirrer. I think the main 3 are definitely Cottonmouth, Mariah, and Diamondback, and those are the big ones. Because then once Diamondback is dealt with, that's the end of the season, right? So Diamondback is the big one, but he comes in after Cottonmouth is dealt with. So it's interesting. Like I said, they're all connected in one way or another. But
so no, he is slithering his way up the chain beforehand, and he does wind up taking over essentially manipulating Mariah. But then Diamondback comes in and is like, I don't know about that when they're Shade's old buddy, old pal. And Shades is like, all right, so we're going to pay Luke Cage to take Diamondback out and they'll hopefully kill each other.
Right.
And then that leads to the climax of the season where, there's this big show off where there was technology that Diamondback was using to recreate how like Luke Cage hits. So he had like he was faking crimes and yelling out that he was Luke Cage so people would think Luke Cage was going around just mercilessly killing cops and people. And the showdown comes down when Diamondback unleashes the full suit
right
on Luke, and they're essentially equals in almost every sense. And then Luke eventually finds out that the reason why he can hit so hard is because the suit is taking the beating and then essentially putting it back out. So Luke lets him beat him up for a while, and then when the suit loses its juice from it, he puts Diamondback down. And that's almost where it ends. And then after he beats Diamondback, the police show up to arrest him and take him back to the prison that he was at initially, because he didn't stay the full term. He broke out.
Right, after he got his powers.
So the ending is essentially, and I'm really excited to see where they go in season 2, or even if they're going to. It looks like they're just going to put it all over into Marvel's Defenders.
Right.
But I'm really excited to see where the arc is going to go, because in the end they removed their hero and the main villain totally out of the equation.
Yeah, they it's interesting because it's basically confirmed that like they can prove because it turns out that Diamondback set up Luke Cage, and he because Luke Cage used to be a cop, and then Diamondback framed him, and that's how he ended up going to jail. But Diamondback didn't plan on them doing experiments there, which made him super powerful. But it's basically confirmed, like, they can prove Diamondback framed him and that they can prove his innocence. But he's okay with it. The whole idea at the end, which I really like, is that he comes to terms with it. He's like, I've been running away. And that's, the problem with always moving forward is like, you try to escape what has already been done, but you can't. You got to take responsibility for it sometimes. And that, at like one of his last lines at the end is, sometimes backwards, but only to move forwards. And I really like that. It's like his mentor and all that stuff. Like he's taking that, but he's grown as a character to sort of understand, like this isn't like black and white. You can't just always move forward. Sometimes you got to take a step back. And it's cool to see that kind of character growth in him. I thought they did that very well. The ending feels great to me of the season. And I'm really excited to see where they take it, honestly.
Well, it's nice too, because they don't treat him like he's a criminal or anything in the end. Like after he takes down Diamondback, and after a lot of the bad shit has been shed to light, and Diamondback essentially goes up against the champion of the people in Harlem and gets defeated, everybody sees Luke as like this big hero, and in his shining moment, he accepts and embraces that he has something he has to do before he can come back and truly be the champion of the people, which I loved, because even when he's in the cop car, they're like, hey, if you need to, like, he's like, I want to coffee or something. And they're like, well, we can stop at Dunkin' Donuts if you want. And he's like, nah, let's just get it over with. So like even in the car, it's almost like they understand that like he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
And that they seem to know that he's letting them take him back.
Right. Well, that's the thing too. Like that's what I like. Again, without that man of mystery thing, they know who he is. They know he's a god, right? So like, or basically, they know how powerful this dude is. So the fact that he's letting them take him, and I like that they respect that, and it shows more of his character of how like, he realizes he has to take responsibility for this. He's not putting up a fight, about it.
Well, that happens. There's another thing the cops say too, is like, we understand what you've done, but you still owe the state of Georgia time. Like they're not mean about it. They're not rude about it. They're not like, aggravated. They're just like, listen, we don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But we have to.
Right. It's a sense of duty, right? And I definitely like how it's handled. And I like that, and the rest of the series too, how cops are handled. Because like it goes into like crooked cops, it goes into trying to like the city cops understanding more of what's going on, but they have to sort of fight the higher ups who don't really understand the situation all too well, but also want they want results in a way.
Right.
And like the way they delve into it, it's very bipartisan, and I like that. You see good sides of cops, you see bad sides of cops, and in his story about black culture, that could have been handled terribly. They could have. There are so many potential ways they could have just absolutely annihilated that. Like it's very rough road to walk, but I feel like they did it really well. At no point did I feel like the cops weren't human, right? Like they were cops before they were
Well, no, and
characters.
there's one scene where we're like I previously had said, where Diamondback is going around faking these killings in Luke Cage's name because he's got like this suit that he's using to like emulate what Luke can do.
Right.
And the cops, like one of the first victim is a cop. It's one of the nicer cops who's like he goes around and he's seen with the community, and everybody really likes him. He's cool.
Only
and
3 days from retirement.
It pretty much, and then you just see this dude walk up and bam, he gets launched and he dies. And he's like, "I'm Luke Cage. Tell everyone." And then he walks up, and then the cops actually think it's Luke because they don't know. The only description they have for this man and Luke Cage is Black Man Hoodie.
Right.
Which is factored into the show when they talk about it, is like, they're starting to shake down every person that they see in a hoodie. And it's brought up that like, this isn't humane. And the cops are like, "Listen, we lost a good man out there because of this guy. We want answers." So they're trying to figure out where he is. And it's almost animalistic with how they do it. But the reasons behind it are like because people, these cops have been pushed to the brink.
Right.
Now that there's some, demigod walking around punching them that just walks up and just bam, gone. So they're scared. Yeah. They want answers. So they start shaking down the community. And they handle that tremendously.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I thought it's a good way to see like you get aspects from both sides. No side feels like it's right or wrong. Like you can relate to either of them, and it doesn't linger on it too long either. Like these cops freak out. They do some unquestionable things, like they beat up this poor kid, just because they really want answers. It's this one particular cop who's I think he's a sergeant. I don't remember. But anyway, so it's this one particular cop who takes it too far, and it's addressed. It's not like it's not like it's left on the table. It's not like it's they deal or they dwell on it forever. It's immediately addressed. It's like, you fucked up as a cop. Like, this isn't our job. I know you care, but this is not what we're supposed to be doing. And then it addresses it, and then after it's addressed, it's over. And I like that. I really like that. I thought
it is over. It's kind of brought up, not like the beat, but like the cops are still upset. Where it's like, some of the cops think it's something fishy that, the man who wouldn't kill anybody in these raids is now suddenly just knocking off cops on the street.
Yeah.
So it is addressed that there's like a divide between the police, and that, there's officers that are crossing the line. There's officers that are trying to stop them from doing that. And after it is addressed, they stop crossing the line, but they make it very obvious that these people are still very, very upset at what's going on, and they still want answers.
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was handled really well. And I also like the crime aspect too. Since we're talking about cops, let's go over to the crime. I feel like the way they handle Harlem, I don't know, I've never been, but as someone who lives in Detroit, I feel like the way they showed city crime. And like some of these people who are a part of city crime, from the limited knowledge I have and the experience that I've had with it, like I just feel like it was really well done. These people aren't just thugs. A lot of them are like, and in the beginning, Pops talks about how they're just people who, if they could have got off the streets, if they had a proper environment they could have grown up in, it would be fine. And like a lot of these criminals, yeah, a lot of them are thuggish, but there's ones in there that are just people. They're just people who feel like they're doing what they need to make ends meet, so to speak. And there are other ones that are people who are doing it because they want to be a part. They want that power, sort of, that comes with it. And it's really cool.
They show that too in the show a lot. Is they show the empathy of some of these criminals. With like there's times where like they're really brutish and like very blunt and very aggressive, and then there's other times where like you see even they're just like this is kind of fucked up. Or like the scene where they're in the bar and he's like, hey, what's going on with her? And she's like, oh, I'm a nurse, I can help her, I'm pretty sure her leg is broken. And he's like, all right, just take care of it, but be quiet about it.
Right.
So like you see the empathy of these guys, like they're not totally heartless.
Right.
And it's also shown they do the criminals very well with Luke Cage, because Luke essentially knocks out like the same like 6 criminals. Like there's like 6 main underlings, and he knocks them all out like every single time. And they get off. They're not arrested. They get arrested, they get out, whatever. And Luke is totally fine. He's like, all right, they went away, they got back out, I'll handle them again. He's like, he knows if he just kills them, then somebody else is going to take their place. So he wants to teach a lesson to the ones that are already there.
And he does.
So it literally especially towards the middle to the end of the season, he's just like, do I even really need to say it anymore? Like, the drill.
Yep, and they just run away.
And they just run, and then the one guy who stays is just like, come on, man.
Yeah, right.
Like he's just like he's so like frustrated and he can't do anything. He's like, it's whatever, and then he just runs.
Yep.
Because he knows how it's gonna play out. He's done it 20 times before.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that one villain or the criminal in the end. I forget his name. Not Zip. I forget. But he's like, he's like, man, I'm gonna go back to Hell's Kitchen, like back where Daredevil is, just because he's like, I can't do anything here, like, what am I gonna do to this guy, this Hulk who walks around openly, and in a dread, like, he's like, I can't make money here, like, he chooses not to deal with it, and I think that's great. But on the aspect of empathizing with the criminals, that's the one thing I have a little issue with is the depth of our main villains. Between Cottonmouth, Mariah, Shades, and Diamondback, there is just they spend a lot of time on these characters' motivations, and sometimes it pays off. Sometimes
I think it's sad too, because the one who I genuinely liked as a villain was Cottonmouth. I think the reasons for him doing that are like, like he had that thing where like he was forced to shoot his mentor and stepfather. He was forced to shoot him by his mother and Mariah.
Well, that's so his mom and we don't know who his dad is, but his mom was Mama Mabel's sister. And she was like, I guess she was like a crack addict or something. So
that's right.
As a baby, she left him on her doorstep and pieced. So Mama Mabel took him in, raised him as her own, and but the mentor, which was Mama Mabel's husband at the time, like, it was somebody that, like, he really wanted to help get Cottonmouth, or Cornell, really wanted to get Cornell wanted to get him out of that life. The kid, he was a talented musician. He really wanted to send him to school and do what he can.
He was paying for lessons on the piano, and he was like, anytime Mama Mabel was like, "Hey, take him with you to go do this dirty work," he's like, "I don't know if I should though."
Yeah, because Mama Mabel had she, like, to her, like, men did dirty work. Like, she was trying to send her daughter to law school, which is Mariah. She's trying to send Mariah to law school so that she could, be a politician and get out of that life. Whereas, men, well, they do the dirty work. So she wanted Cottonmouth to be a part of that, that gangster life, because that's what men do. But yeah, her husband was like, no, like he's a talented kid too. Like why does why does Mariah get to go to college and he doesn't? Like, let's do good things for him. Not to say that this is a good man, by the way.
He was very he killed people. He sold things.
Apparently he molested Mariah too, apparently.
Allegedly, yeah.
But well, I'm gonna say it's true because I mean, well, so what happens is you see
it's never shown, which I think is why I say allegedly, because normally for something like that, it's something where okay, well, oh, he tried to get me and I wouldn't let him, so he struck me. But they really make it seem, especially at the end of Cornell, where he's like, I saw how you used to walk around him. I saw the way you looked at him. You were practically begging for it. You wanted it. And then she has that whole freak out moment.
Yeah, she snaps.
And it's because Cornell, I'm pretty sure it's because Cornell saw right through her and she can't use that lie anymore.
I don't think so, because her rage in that moment is different than her rage whenever she gets caught. Whenever she's a very Mariah is a very manipulative character. Whenever she gets caught, she always tries to act like she's on top, and that's how she handles things. She can't, like, by acting like she's on top, she sort of gives this emotion that she can't do no wrong. That's her character. That's how she keeps people under her. She reminds them that she's the one on top. So, like, even when shit's going wrong, and even if it is a little bit on her side, by sticking her nose up, everyone sort of remembers, like, oh, okay, we're beneath you, sort of, except for, her cousin. And so that's how she's reacted every other moment. This moment, Cornell calls her out, and instead of trying to, like, pass it off, it's just blind rage, throws him out of a window, takes, like, a microphone stand, and just starts plumbing into him, just beating the living shit out of him, just constantly screaming, like, I did not, that to me is PTSD. That to me is, you crossed a fucking line because I went through some shit that I buried away and you tried to bring it back up. How dare you? And that's how I took that.
Well, you see, I see it more as guilt. I see it because he was the father figure who was around, who helped provide and everything. And it's never shown, which is why I think it's the opposite of what has been portrayed. That's the thing, is, like, typically with something like that, they'll show hints at it. It was never hinted. It was never. There was nothing to lead up that was going on.
Well,
and then Cornell gives the backstory of, like, you constantly.
Well, that's the thing, though. When they kill him, or so, like, he betrays Mama Mabel in one fashion or another, and in this flashback, and Mama Mabel has Cornell, point a gun at him and at her husband and be like, you back the line, you have to die now. And before he dies, he pleads to Mariah, who's, this young girl, probably like, what, 18? No, she's in college, so probably like 19, 20. She's like, hey, we had fun, right? And she's like, how dare you? Like, she yells at him, she screams at him. And then, of course, Cornell shoots him, almost like a coward. Like, he doesn't really, like, plan to. I think, like, maybe just by shaking, he pulls the trigger. And that's what we see of that. To me, as far as the writing goes, it gives me no reason to doubt that the things that happened to her were not of her consent. I'm trying not to speak from, like, personal experience, because
I just,
like, as someone who
this
studied,
is good though, because we have two different opinions, because it's never, like, for me, it was never shown, it was never hinted at until that moment. So I think it was something else where, like, she made a move and he denied it and she kept pushing, and it eventually hit a point where, he got physical to get her away. So to cover that up and to avoid Mama Mabel's wrath, she told Mama Mabel that, yeah, he was trying to, do this.
But
and then that's when the line gets crossed, and that's why I think she gets so mad, is because that was the first time.
I don't think she'd get mad enough to kill her brother for that, though. Not over that. And also, too, I think Mama Mabel knows. Like, I think, because remember, she had that was a big part of her house. Is if you had your man beating you or treating you badly, you went to Mama Mabel and she took care of it. And there's that aspect too where like I feel like Mama Mabel probably knew, but like she stopped it. She put an end to it. There's a lot of like that's the reason like Mariah explains that like that's one of the reasons that she went to school. Like she went to Mama Mabel sent her to school to get away from her husband because her husband had wanted to do things to her. But her husband was also a very viable member of the mafia and stuff, so it's not like she could just get rid of her without more probable cause. And also too, like I think her husband was alive at the time, so like there's that, but that's speculation. I don't really go into that. So to me, like it doesn't make sense.
The case for me in the sense of the other way is like, yeah, she sent me to get me away from him, but I'm like, oh, okay, well that would make sense, like, cause she was quick, like, oh, he hit me, like, okay, she was quick to gun him down, but like that's why it seems to speak the opposite, because it's like if it's your daughter, then she's just like, I will get her away from the temptation, that's why to me it seems to speak the opposite.
Well, so though that's what I mean though, is like because like he's the brother, or Mama Mabel's husband is the brother of or I'm sorry, Mama Mabel had a husband, and that was. And then he died. He ran everything, and then he died. Mom Mabel took over, and then she married his brother. So, like, I don't, if her husband was still alive, like, you can't just go off and kill your brother, like, or his brother. Like, I don't know how that worked out. To me, though, it doesn't make sense as far as Mariah's character goes, because Mariah's character has never snapped. She doesn't. She's a very composed woman. And especially, like, she keeps Cornell alive despite him fucking up constantly.
She does.
I love Cornell.
In a sense,
I love him as a character. But he fucks up. Like, I saw his death coming. He needed to die because he's a shitty freaking criminal mind. He is not very smart. He makes bad moves all the time. He wasn't really good at it.
Well, that's why I liked him, though. It's very clear that the only reason he's doing it is because
that's his life. He was born.
This is what was thrust upon him as a kid,
and he tried to
fight it.
That's the tragedy. That's the tragedy.
The last time he tried to fight it, his last hurrah wound up getting shot. Right,
but to me, I think, I get that, but I think he had more reasons to be killed off if Mariah really wanted to. And the only reason I think she would go into that rage is if it set up something, and I don't think guilt does that. Guilt wouldn't do that. If it were guilt, she would have retreated into herself and then find some other way to make him suffer. The fact that she attacked him is because like she can't comprehend how dare he. That's like if you're getting that angry, that is a how dare you accuse me of such a thing when you don't even know, you spoiled brat. That's the feeling I got off of it. But I don't know. It's really interesting though, because, and this is like, I know we tangent kind of quite a bit here, but this is like the main point I go around to is like, look at like all this conversation we can have about these characters. They go so in depth to these villains. It's crazy.
They are very well written. The writing in this show is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame because I feel like Diamondback doesn't get that same treatment as these two characters do.
Oh, he does. Well, I feel like they're going to have Diamondback come back in a big way.
Probably, but yeah, I think that just goes to show though, like you said, like the writing in this, it's just great. It's honestly some of my favorite. They really killed it. And they killed Cornell too, but whatever. I think
mic check.
And then what? But the last thing I want to touch on, and then we'll wrap up writing here in a second, is the other thing I like to. Speaking of Cornell's death, is the character arcs really take weird turns because you really think Cottonmouth.
Oh yeah.
You think Cottonmouth is going to be the villain through the whole thing, and then that happens, and to me it really threw me off. I didn't see it coming because, like I said, Mariah is a very composed character. I didn't think if Cottonmouth was gonna die, it would be from her, and I didn't think Cottonmouth was gonna die, and it happened. And like she throws him through a window, beats the hell out of him, and then you're like, holy shit! Like and then like she has to take over the criminal organization, and it really threw me off. And there's other things like that too, because then you think, okay, so Mariah's the main villain, but then they bring in Diamond back, and Diamondback starts taking the reins, and you're like, what the? It was really great. I really like all the twists and turns they threw with that. Again, I know I keep saying this like a broken record, but refreshing, really refreshing. And then the last thing I want to talk about. Sorry if I'm just like pinpointing these, but
You're good.
I just feel like you could say them and you're done. Is there's a bit of a theme of persecution in the series. And I thought that was really interesting too, because one, I mean, I feel like that's the only theme you're going to go with if you're talking about like Harlem and black culture. I mean, like, but between Luke,
what's that racist?
but between Luke and like even like we're talking about Mariah here, like there's just a lot of these characters get persecuted in ways that like no one really knows what's going on, but it's just sort of assumed. And
yeah. Well, that's they constantly are like it essentially isn't so much a battle of fist fights in Luke Cage, which is I mean there are a lot of fights in this show, but it's more in a sense a battle for the people's eye. So like Luke shows up and people love him, and then they give him a reason to hate him, so they hate him, and then he fights for the people again and they love him, and then she tries to get them to hate him again, and then she starts going after the cops. She starts going after, oh, there were all these shady cops on the force and this and that, and then this happened, and Luke Cage is going around beating people up and this, and it really is like a tug of war, not for like the survival of the villain or the hero. It's more of a tug of war for the support of the people.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think you kind of hit on the nail on the head there. I think it's interesting because like at any moment, like some like you like we mentioned when we're talking about the police force, like there are moments where like, oh, we have like this is a guy who's our hero, but then at the other moment they're like, oh, this guy might be doing these things, like we gotta get him, like. But despite the fact they don't have like any like concrete proof, and then like at other times, like they're Luke Cage does something where they're like, oh, like he is the hero we thought he was, and but more importantly, the aspect of the people of Harlem and winning their vote, sort of, I think is interesting. It's almost political in an aspect, like when they're at the church, Pops dies and like everyone is there because basically all of Harlem knows Pops, right? And they Cornell goes up to speak and he's like, yeah, they called him the Cottonmouth, I hate that name, but I'm Cornell, don't you love me? And like everyone's like, yeah, woo, we'll clap. And then he says some more profound things, but then Luke goes up and sort of counters his argument almost like it was like a debate, and of course Luke gets the standing ovation, right? And when he walks out, he talks to his cop friend who's like, you just started World War III in there, like you don't realize what you've done. And she's absolutely right, because like the politics of the situation are more important than the actual physical threats that are going on. I feel like in any other show that really bored me, but this show really does it well. It doesn't take sides, but it shows that like the city does though, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, they definitely. It is essentially like the whole initial season is like a tug of war for the people's support, where Luke comes out of the gate, nobody's really sure what to think of him, and then they start to like him, and they're like, we gotta shut that down. So then it flips, now they hate him, and then they like him, and then they hate him, and then they like him, and then they hate him, and then they're not sure what to think.
The same goes with Mariah too. Like Mariah as a politician, people love her for her support, but then at the same time they try to find ways to bring her down, and like because she's connected with Cornell, they a lot of people are just tried, like they feel like she is a part of the criminal organization, which technically she is, and but then at the same time she tries to build them up, and like even Diamondback, like when you look at it, like Diamondback was someone who because he was, so it turns out like he is Luke's brother because Luke's father cheated on his wife with this maiden or whatever. Maiden, what is this, like 12th century, with his mistress, and like he sort of gets persecuted for just the idea that his father was this huge priest and everything, and it couldn't be the priest doing this, so like him and his mom get like thrown out and they get abandoned almost, and like all this terrible crap happens because like it's just
that's the only part that I think the writing really skimps out on is the motivations of Diamondback.
Diamondback, I agree.
They kind of gloss over the fact that like he had a shitty upbringing.
Sorry, it just hit my funny bone. You're good. Continue.
You gonna be okay there, little babu?
I'll make it. I promise.
But no, so they really almost gloss over the fact that he had a really shitty upbringing.
Yeah.
Because of they shared a father, but like he had a very different upbringing than Carl because he was the bastard who lived a shitty life, and Carl got everything he ever wanted because he was the priest's son. And
Carl's Luke Cage, by the way.
Luke Cage's real name is Carl Lucas.
Yeah,
so they wind up talking about like how close they were as brothers, but they make it seem like the point that did it for Stryker, which is Diamondback. They seem it like Stryker's tipping point was when they stole a car, they got caught, Carl got off and sent to the Marines because that was Carl's out, was like his father worked it because his father was a priest, a very well-known priest.
Right.
So his father worked it so that way Carl could just go to the Marines.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't serve any prison time and it would do him some good. But Stryker got juvie time.
Right.
And then he got subsequently jail time as well with it for a stolen car, and that seems like the whole motivation of Stryker is just like, you were pampered, I wasn't.
I think
that's the only part I don't like about the writing.
They go into it a little bit, and I can completely see how you miss it because that's my problem with it. Is it's just like I said, they go into it a little bit, but the main thing is the main motivation is his mom. His mom gets sick, and I think she ends up dying. I think he says something terrible happens, but because she's the mistress of this really well-known clergyman, like he's not helping her out at all. Like, I mean, he pays her okay to keep her quiet at first, but then like I think he dies or something. Something happens to the point where they don't get they don't get like the money they deserve, sort of, is how he feels. So Diamondback ends up getting mad because like his mom dies because she gets sick and she can't get saved because the clergyman's not willing to pay for it and all this shit. And then she dies while he's in jail. That's what it was. I remember now. But so that's technically his motivation. But I mean, like, I'm grasping at straws here because it's hard to remember because it's I'm just gonna say this and let's go back to Luke Cage. You know what I mean? Like they don't.
I'm gonna say this real quick one time, and then the rest of the time I'm just gonna be really, really mad and talk about that time we stole a car.
Right. Exactly.
And that's it.
So, in fact, I don't even think Diamondback tells him. I think Luke remembers somehow or some bullshit.
He remembers when he's in the church, he's like, "Oh, I guess he was my brother," because the mistress and the actual wife are talking.
Oh yeah, he has memories of it, and he's like, I should have put it together before, like, because apparently it was obvious. But yeah, so honestly that's really the only flaw I think.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, that's my only flaw with the writing is just how that's glossed over.
Because Diamondback is supposed to be this big time villain, right? Like, but honestly, you liked Mariah and Cottonmouth way more. Yeah, but I mean, I think that's saying something. Like, that's like your only issue is that they just didn't flesh out this one character well enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think we've said it enough. But the writing in this show, superb,
it's
really good. Yep. You want to
now
go
for
on
design.
Yeah, let's go to the visuals.
So, like, Luke Cage is black. That's important.
Okay, actually, this is something I want to bring up, and I don't know if you noticed this too, but yellow.
Oh yeah, the black and yellow.
There's just a lot of yellow tones, yellow lighting, yellow shirts. I guess I don't know, like
that's done on purpose. Luke Cage's get up in the classic
comics
and the
was
new
the yellow shirt, right?
was it was jeans and a yellow shirt.
Okay, because yeah, a lot of the lighting, like everything has like this yellow tint to it, which I actually really like. I think it's good. I didn't know why, but I think you're absolutely right on that.
It's because initially, he wore a yellow shirt and jeans, and even in the newer one, instead of it being like a collared shirt, it's just like a normal shirt now. And I think they did a really great job at picking the actor, because the actor, he looks like Luke Cage. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously he's not inhumanly ripped like Luke is, but he's still very, very buff. He does look like Luke Cage. He plays a wonderful Luke Cage, and I think they're setting the tones because they really they stripped away the yellow shirt in favor of sweaters, and the sweater that
you mean
seems
his hoodies or
yeah, his hoodies.
yeah.
So, and the hoodie that seems to be the one that stayed constant for the longest was the hoodie that had the yellow inside of the hood.
Right.
So I think that was kind of like their little nod to it, but they do throw a lot of yellow in there. That is right. And I think that's why it's from his classical design. They actually reference in the scene where he's breaking out.
Oh, the tiara. Yeah.
The tiara and the bracelets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
his Power Man costume or whatever.
Yeah, that was his original design, and that's the initial shirt and pants that he's got on. Is that's their version essentially of like his classic attire, and then he looks in the mirror and he pulls a fucking Devil May Cry, and he's like, "Oh, you look stupid," and then he takes the tiara off, and I'm like, "All right, fuck you, dude. I took this shit from Dante in the newest game. I don't need to take this shit from you."
I mean, it is a very outdated look, but I like the bracers though. I think the bracers were a cool look, but it's also like that's the thing though, is like he's supposed to be the hero without the mask, right? If Deadpool is the merc with a mouth, he's the hero without a mask. So like, it makes sense that they'd get rid of it, but yeah, him calling it out obviously is tongue in cheek.
It's such a dick move.
Yeah.
Not in a million years.
No, I'm not gonna wear them bell bottom pants. Listen, man, bell bottom pants, they're gonna come back in style. I feel it.
Well, the 80s are coming back in general.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people with dress coats with rolled up to the elbow, huge shoulder pads,
Converse,
Converse. Oh my gosh! But okay, so here's something I don't know if you noticed too. The CGI in the show. So there are fight scenes that are pretty good because they use practical effects. It's him punching stuff, him ripping stuff up. You know what I mean? Like there's a scene where like a car hits him, and the camera delightfully pans away from the car actually hitting to him, and then pans back, and the car's all crushed, and he's like in the center of it. And that stuff is good. But man, I don't know what it is, but why do television shows have the worst CGI of all freaking time? It looks like it literally looks like a WB show. Like when they blow up the Chinese restaurant, like that fireball was so bad. It looked terrible. I was like, and literally like, that's like the only instance of it. Like everything else, like I said, it's practical effects. Like when Cottonmouth gets pushed out a window or out, like through the window and all the glass shit, or any other time where he's punching and throwing guys. Like there's like that scene where he throws the cop into the car. Like that looks great, but that's because it was like a practical effect. But like, yeah, the any moment of CGI looks so bad.
It looks really well. That's like the moment where like the dude punches him in the face in the restaurant and his wrist shatters.
Yeah.
That looked horrendously. It was a cool shot. Like I'm not trying to like bash on it, but it is very obvious that it is CGI.
Yeah, and I don't know like why. It's just the thing with TV shows, man. I guess they just don't have the budget for it. But yeah, it's interesting too because like I feel like they could have. Why did you stick with practical effects? Like, was it really? Because like I thought the reason people use CGI is because it's cheaper, right? Isn't that the idea?
Right.
So like, why can't you get good CGI?
well, certain CGI is cheaper.
Yeah.
A lot of them do it so that way it'll be easier and less time consuming than practical effects. But the issue is, yeah, they're on that Charmed budget. So,
Oh gosh, wow, it's not that bad. Charmed was, oh, that was ridiculous. That was so bad.
I wave my hand. Here's an insert stock effect. So, no, it is very obvious when the CGI does come in. That's agreeable. I think in terms of tone, in terms of the colors that they use throughout, and in terms of design, it is very nice with what they. I kind of, it's obvious sometimes that they're using the same fucking streets
yes
to shoot this. Like, it's always like I said earlier, it's like the same 6 streets.
Yeah, that's I was gonna.
It literally is like the exact same 6 streets over and over again.
I had that's one of my notes I wrote down was that the cinematography does an interesting job. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but it does an interesting job, at least, of making the city feel small. And I didn't know what it was, but I think that's it. Because it feels like a real tight-knit community. It doesn't feel like we're in a part of like we're in Harlem. It feels like we're in a small part of Harlem. Like, it feels like I don't think we ever see more than 4 blocks, right? Like, which I get, like, that's the downtown area. But it, yeah, it makes the city feel really small, and
it is very
I thought that was
much
interesting because Daredevil does the opposite. Daredevil makes Hell's Kitchen seem huge, and I was like, "What's like?" Actually, to the point where I was a little confused because I was like, "Is Hell Kitchen like? Is that actually New York, or is that like a part of New York? Like, I thought that was just a road. Like, what? Because it seems like in Daredevil, like there's a big city there, but with Luke Cage, it feels like we're in like a nook and just like cranny of the city. Like, we're just in a small corner.
Right. Luke Cage feels like it's a small town that happens to be a city.
Right, exactly.
Like, it doesn't feel like this huge expanded city, and that's probably due to in part with the majority of the locations used are Pops' shop. The restaurant that he used to live above was initially used, and then it just switched over. I almost thought it was the same restaurant, to be honest, when they for the new restaurant for Rosario Dawson's mother.
Oh, yeah.
I almost thought it was the same restaurant, to be honest. I thought they rebuilt it, and I was like, oh, they did a good job. No, different, but I think that's why it feels small, is because the only time it ever feels like it's slightly larger of a city than what it actually is the car chase scene.
Oh, but yeah.
Even the car chase scene only goes for like 8 blocks, and then it stops.
Yeah.
and so I think that's the only time when it doesn't show like the same, because majority of the focus is like Pops' shop, the restaurants, or there was the club was a huge one.
Club,
yeah.
Which I'll use that as a segue actually. The other huge thing is the music emphasis, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Oh,
yes.
Like, pretty much every time there's they need a segue for a scene, they cut to music happening at this club.
Long little cheek.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's great because, like, again, it's that emphasis on the cultural aspect of Harlem, right? Like, and I thought it was really smart because, like, it doesn't just feel Harlem, but, like, again, maybe just because, like, I'm a Detroit guy, but, like, I love Motown. I love Motown music. I love that kind of aesthetic, I guess.
Downtown book and
that's not Motown. Motown is like Rubber Band Man. Come on, get yourself straight.
She's a brick house.
Yeah, but and maybe, like I said, maybe it's just because, like, I relate. But it's an aesthetic I really liked, and I liked the way they did it too because it didn't linger too hard on it. It just used it for segues, and I thought that was a smart way to segue. Well, because, like, this mafia villain, he sits atop in his clubhouse and he just watches the people do his thing while he plots. So, like, that's most of the time you ever see Cottonmouth is when he's up in his office plotting. So the way it would segue from, like, a Luke Cage to a Cottonmouth segment or a Luke Cage to a Mariah segment would be like, you go to the club and you see people either practicing their music or playing in front of a crowd or whatever, and then it would go to it would continue to the next scene, And a lot of times, like you said, like the "Hail to the Chief," like sometimes a lot the music too, you can give you a feel, and it sets the tone for the next scene that's about to play. And I thought that was really smart, honestly.
Oh, they definitely use the music to set the tones for those scenes, especially with the initial scene where you see the inside of the club when Luke's working and they force him to be a bartender.
Yeah.
It shows you like this really detailed, in-depth look at the club, and it shows you what a typical night at this club when it's open is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's packed. There's a woman on stage singing, and it's a fantastic song. And you see, Cottonmouth and Mariah are up top, and they're talking and scheming, and they're overlooking this club, which is almost like the club is almost like their empire. And I think they use that really well, because after Luke starts to bring down this crime syndicate in a sense, all the other shots, the initial couple of shots that you see when they're on top of their game is like the club is packed or there's a lot of people in it, and then a majority of the shots after, the club's almost empty.
Yeah.
So it's like the club seems to get progressively more empty the more control they lose over their city.
Ah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. No, you're absolutely right.
That was just something that I noticed, because it was like I noticed that there was it was totally jam packed. Then there was just there was a good chunk of people. Then there was some people, and then it just seemed to be like there was nobody ever in there after that, and it was like they were just losing control. And you just see like Cottonmouth and like a few of his gang members would just be in that office talking, but it was dead silent in the club.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are moments too where like they're there before the club opens, which I get, but
well, yeah, but like majority of the times you see them plotting, like that comes in with the musical segues too.
Yeah.
Is when you see them plotting, you do see a musical segue. Sorry. But the time when the times when they are at their absolute least amount of control, it's dead silent in the club. There's no band playing. There's nobody there but like the few people that are trying to like figure out. They're like, what the fuck is going on? How do we stop this bulletproof man?
Right.
But then it goes to then like even I'll use an example as like the design and everything for it. Then Mariah gets control.
Yeah.
And then you see the club. Luke is essentially been made out to be the enemy of the city. Favor starts shifting into her pocket, and then you see there's people in the club
again. Yeah.
And then there's that band playing. Everybody's in the club. They're all having a good time, and the club is packed again.
Huh. Yeah, that's really smart. I love it. I think that's great. I know.
So that was just something I picked up on.
Yeah, I didn't notice that at all. That's freaking crazy. And the show does a lot of smart things like that too. There are some real good shots. The cinematography of this show for a TV show, like not even for a TV show, like movie standards, is really good. It has some really good shots, like the Biggie painting. And Cottonmouth has a big painting of Biggie Smalls wearing a crown. And I forgot, it's based off an actual painting, but I forget what it's called. But anyway, some artist you are, shut up. They
some asshole painted it, whatever, fuck
whatever, I don't care. But he oh man, that's gonna kill me now. Whatever. I'm sure if anyone pays attention to this, someone will write it in the comments. So he's got this big ass painting, and he stands in front of it. And as he walks towards the camera, it appears as if the crown is on him, not Biggie, because it's real smart. It was really good. Of course, they draw attention to it, which I don't like. Because the thing is, he's intimidating. Well, yeah, but
because he beats down a kid who stole one of the kids who stole from him, and he beats that kid down. And then he like straightens himself up, stands up, and then goes and looks over his club, or what I said metaphorically, their empire. And he's standing there and he's looking, and he has the crown on his head.
Well, yeah, but he does it before that too. But he draws attention to it. So like before he beats the kid, he goes, "I see you like he stands right by the painting." He goes, "I see you like my Biggie painting." He's like, "You want to know the big thing about it is," and as he walks forward towards the kid he's about to kick his ass. You don't really see that though. It's just focused on the upper half of his body. So as he walks towards the camera, his head fills the space, and it looks like he's wearing a crown. He's like, see, the thing that draws your eye is the crown, and like he draws attention to it. And I kind of wish they would have made it a little more subtle, just kind of let the cinematography speak for itself. Because it's already not a very subtle thing, but I still liked it though. Like even with that, it's still like there's a lot of shots like that where just like you said, symbolism, right?
Right.
And I thought that was really good. And between that and the music, like I was just loving it. I'm bopping, loving it, loving it. Luke Cage is great. Well, I guess with that,
I love the theme song too.
Oh yeah, and like the music that plays throughout, they just like instrumental music or whatever.
And that's gonna be my final statement on that is gonna be about the theme song and how they portray the opening scene, because the opening scene with the theme song is literally just like it cuts over, like it's a model of Luke Cage throwing a punch, but it cuts over like certain parts of his body, and while it's doing that, it's like, you know, you see the bridge on his back, or like you see like street signs on his arms and things of that, and it like parts of Harlem are all around his body, which is also a great symbolism for like he is fighting for Harlem.
Right. Yeah, it looks really great. They did something kind of similar to that too with Daredevil, where like it's blood dripping down a sort of like a statue that, and the blood like makes the his outfit sort of, which I really liked. But no, the music though, I think it does a great job of capturing that 70s feel. Which of course, if you ever take a look at the main comic, like it's all, like I said, it's all about the 70s. People got bell bottoms and afros, and so I like that too, where they kind of try to keep that 70s feel without making it overbearing. And the way they did that is by keeping by making the main theme and the instrumental music that plays throughout, like giving it a little bit of that feel. I thought that was really cool. It was a good throwback to the original comic.
Yeah, it was very nice.
I think we've been gushing enough. Do you want to go ahead and start giving our final thoughts?
Yes. I give it on a scale of I hated it to I loved it. I'll give it a Luke Cage was black, and that's important out of 5. So
that's good. No, I'm glad you just brought it full circle.
It was, I have to. It was I genuinely really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the design. I enjoyed the cinematography. I enjoyed the music. I loved the writing. I love the show. I think the way that they portray majority of the people in the show is really, really nice. How they humanize everybody is really, really nice. And the intertwining stories and sections are tied together very nicely amongst everything. So I really enjoyed the show. Yeah.
On a scale of disappointing to masterpiece, I gotta say, this is a very entertaining sit through. It's honestly, it's 10 episodes, an hour piece. It was really easy to binge watch. From writing that's very tight and very, it's very tight, but at the same time, like it takes its time to develop the characters, to sort of let things breathe. But everything still moves forward. You never feel like you're rolling your eyes waiting for things to happen. Characters' motivations are clear, even if some are more fleshed out than others. But ultimately, it's very entertaining, and I had a wonderful time seeing it. I've watched the whole thing about 3 times. It's great. I absolutely loved it.
I would like to reevaluate my scale. It's a Rosario Dawson naked out of 5. That's what you get.
That's pretty good, actually. I will take it. That's a high regard right there. But thank you everybody for. I was gonna say thank you for watching, but thank you for listening.
Thank you for watching our audio.
Yep. I'm glad. Someone's just been staring at their screen the whole time this has been playing. Like, instead of doing other things while listening to the podcast.
Dante's racist! We
That-
gotta kill him!
Listen, man, you got it coming. I hope you're prepared. You better. Your butthole is about to get singed.
Oh God, I dug a grave and I had to dedicate.
Yeah, I had to dedicate. Well, I'll sing at your funeral.
Again, I say I love the show. I love the tones it sets, and I understand what it's trying to portray, and I can really respect that.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, goofs aside, it's really just.
And I hope that nobody takes any of the jokes that I made too serious. As
Everyone,
they are
this is the
jokes.
internet. This is 2017. The internet.
If you
Someone's
get
taking it too
upset,
seriously.
Write a comment on a slip of paper and shove it up your ass.
Actually, Dante, why don't they tell you? Why don't you tell them where they can find you so they can tweet
Twitter,
you angrily?
Twitter.com. I am retro_goblin. Fight me.
Fight me. And you can find me at Bamzaram. That's BAMZERAM. And if you want to go ahead and contact us, you can send us an email at Artistically Speaking Pod. I had to think about it real quick. Artistically Speaking Pod at gmail.com. And of course, if you find this on YouTube or iTunes, feel free to give us a comment, give us a rating. Probably 5 stars.
You don't overdo it. Give us a 3. It's what we deserve.
and on that note, I guess, thank you guys. This has been Artistically Speaking with your host Spam
and Dante.
Until next time, never feel guilty about your pleasures. Thanks again for watching. You can find Artistically Speaking on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at ArtsySpeakPod. That's ArtsySpeakPod. The intro music is They Come From Above from the album Blast Processor by the talented Tony Lays. You can check out and purchase their work at Tony Lays, that's TONILAYS.bandcamp.com. Again, that's TonyLays.bandcamp.com.